Hi, Mike.
Hey, how you doing? All right?
Yeah, good, thank you. How are
Happy
you?
weekend. Oh, good. Thank you very much. Hey, Kim. Right.
Hi, Kim.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah. How are the housemates?
Yeah, pretty good. I had I missed last night's call because I walked in the house after doing some grocery shopping and they're like, "So Negronis and Drag Race?" I'm like, "Yes." Like, how can I say no to that?
What is this drag race thing that everyone keeps talking about?
It is. Well, it's not. There are now British versions, but originally it's kind of like. Trying to think of the best thing to describe it. It's a reality TV show, essentially. Not so like I can't think of Great British Bake Off, but with drag queens instead.
Right.
Yes, that's probably the closest thing.
So it's baking.
No, it's turning it's a series of people, generally men. I think it's all men so far, who are drag queens, and they have to do a series of challenges over.
Okay. I didn't realize there
each
was
week
challenges.
there's like a mini challenge and a major challenge, and they get judged on them about their abilities. Like, I'm just explaining Drag Race to Nick, who doesn't know what it is.
Because I just thought I've not seen it before, but
Yeah.
I knew it was drag queens. I just thought it was like a fashion show or something.
So that's a component of it. So there's like acting, comedy, like performance, fashion. They get judged on makeup. They get judged on like a series of things every week, like various competencies. And then they do play up stereotypes a fair amount, but it's still fairly amusing to watch. It's not something I ever thought I'd actually be into, but I've actually kind of enjoying it.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
my friend Rose is like obsessed with it. It's she like totally loves it.
Hey, Malcolm.
Oh, hello.
Hello there.
Hello, Malcolm.
How's it going?
Oh, good. Loving your moody lighting again.
Oh, sorry, will I go back?
Moody lighting. That lighting that's just like.
Yes, I have a beer. I would invite anyone who feels similarly affected by beer desire to get involved.
It was one of my work colleagues' last days today, so we had a beer at 3:00, and then after work I had a slow gin, and then I had a glass of wine with dinner, and I'm a bit like, I think I'll stop on the alcohol now.
That's very fair. That's quite a sort of Elizabeth and the Thursday Murder Club sort of day.
Yeah. So now I'm on the water.
Yeah,
very sensible. Cheers.
Just made myself sleepy time tea, so I would like to drink, but no, I need to sleep properly tonight. So.
Maybe you'll fall asleep on Storytime. I think Zach is not joining us tonight, so we need somebody else to be the designated faller asleep on Storytime.
Where's Carmen?
Where's
Carmen?
Your beautiful voice.
You.
Oh, not Miss Joyce. Come on. I've been catching up ever since like work finished. So.
Oh wow.
Fully immersed.
That's impressive.
I finished catching up one episode as well. It was a good one. I have to be honest, if I had been present, because there's no such like book that has such high chapter numbers, at the appropriate moment, I would have essentially unmuted myself and gone,
Nice.
Yeah,
you would. I knew. I fucking knew.
I thought it as well, to be honest.
As I read it,
yes. Not just
as I read it, I thought.
Excellent.
Why didn't you say nice?
I should have done.
Because I'm a goddamn professional.
I'm a professional. Yeah, I love that sort of concept over the internet. It's one of my favorite meme-related sort of humor comment things.
Yeah.
It's just, it's not even that funny. I just love that it's such a thing.
Okay, hold on. Should I I can do it again. I can do it. I can do it again.
Recreate it for us.
Okay. Okay. So I'll give a couple of sentences run up. Well, that's why I'm here, isn't it, Dad? Ron nods. I'll call Elizabeth. 69.
Nice.
Nice.
What's happening?
Malcolm and Mike are getting very excited about 69ing.
Yike.
I think that also the fact that it is prefaced with "I'll call Elizabeth" also works very nicely there.
Nice. Text number. We are small but perfectly formed today. There's going to be
Is this it, do you think?
hella catch-up crew tonight or tomorrow, whenever.
God, people have plans and stuff. That's.
It's delightful. Catch-up crew. I'm so delighted that you had Friday night plans. I hope that you are having a wonderful Friday night. And have a hug. Have a hug. Katie. Yeah, hug her more. Hug her more.
Oh. How are you, Frankie? How's your day been?
My day's been good. I've been working hard and it's gone well, which has been enjoyable.
That's good.
What else? I haven't left the house today, which is always quite nice, you know.
Yeah, keeping cozy.
Occasional, a little bit of a kind of hunker down in the bunker situation.
Has it been a blanket and book day?
It has. I started to read my book and then I stopped and I decided to make a sort of pizza thing instead. So
good.
we had
Homemade
like
pizza's the best.
It was like a pull apart pizza bread and roast broccoli, and it was fucking enormous. And I ate way more of it than I should have. Yeah.
Oi, no language around foods.
I was just absolutely fucking stuffed. Like I was.
Were you sad?
Stuffed to the gunnels. There wasn't really enough room inside me for emotion anymore. You know when you've had to clear out all of the crevices to fill it with food, and you kind of sit there like a sack of wet cement.
I mean, that sounds more fun than what Greg was getting us to do today, which was doing 4 different movements to try to stop thinking about life.
What 4 movements do you do to stop thinking about life?
We were doing, I think, bouncing in time to the music, plus moving your head, plus breathing, plus doing like a tapping thing.
That's stressful to me. That feels more stressful rather than less stressful. Maybe I'm not doing it right. Mike, I think you were doing it right. That looked pretty bang on.
I feel like there are some parish councils that could do with, bringing this into their meetings.
The Cooper's Chase Parking Committee should bring it. Mike, could I ask a favour?
Yes.
Could I ask a favour? Could you do like a kind of L'Oreal style hair swish for me?
While talking.
I can't do two things at once. Too much.
Yeah,
No, that people can see you.
It needs to be something like I was awake this morning, bang, and then I did a thing like that.
I think we've got incoming from Katie.
Frankie, your hair
Don't
looks
try
amazing.
to get away from this.
Also, it's time for story, but you're so pretty. Look at that curl, everyone. That little curl on the side of her face. Don't you just want to doing it?
It's doingable.
Nine. doing a good thing today. Well done, Curl. Thank you, Katie. Storytime. Okay. Let's mute everybody. Mute all of the people. All of them. All of the people. Yes. Yes. It's you as well. Yes. Yes. Now. No. Oh no, I'm still on chapter 69. Nice. Yes, Malcolm. Quite enough of that. Now, are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. "70. It can be very hard to smoke in a sauna, but Jason Ritchie is giving it his best shot. Are you sure you're okay with this, Dad? He asks, sweat dripping from his brow. Just tell them everything, replies Ron. They'll know what to do. And you reckon they'll find him? Asks Jason. I should have thought so, says Ibrahim, stretched out on a lower bench. The sauna door opens and Elizabeth and Joyce enter with towels wrapped around swimsuits. Jason puts out his cigarette in a pile of hot ash. Well, this is nice, says Joyce. Eucalyptus. Nice to see you, Jason, says Elizabeth, taking a seat opposite the half-naked boxer. I believe you think that we might be of use to you. I must say, I agree. That's it for pleasantries. Elizabeth fixes her eyes on Jason. So? Jason tells Elizabeth and Joyce the same story he told his dad. A copy of the photo is passed around the sauna. Ibrahim has had it laminated. I get the photo, confirms Jason, and I'm like, what's this about? Where's this from? Is this the papers? Is this the front page of the Sun tomorrow? That's what I was thinking. But there's no message, nothing. There's no journalist on the phone, and they've got a number for me, so what's up? And what was up? Asks Elizabeth. Well, I'm thinking, do I ring my PR? Maybe they've spoken to her. I was in shock, to be fair. This is 20-odd years ago, this photo, and a world I'd left behind. So I'm ready to deny whatever or come up with something. Stag do, fancy dress, anything to explain it away. Ooh, that's good, says Joyce. So there I am, still looking at this picture, and something clicks. I think, well, maybe this is the game. Maybe Tony's got hold of this photo, famous boxer surrounded by cash, jailbirds everywhere. He sends me a copy looking for a bit of money. Give me 20k, whatever, and I don't go to the papers. Fair enough, really, so I think, yeah, I should just ring him, have a little chat, see if we can work something out. Was Tony Curran the kind of man who might blackmail you? Asks Elizabeth. Tony's the sort of man who might do anything, yeah. So, first things first, I get hold of a new phone, cheap one in town. Afterward, will you tell me where, because I'm looking for one at the moment, says Ibrahim. Of course, Mr. Arif, says Jason. So I ring him once and no answer. I ring him again. Same. Leave it 20 minutes and try again. He's still not picking up. I never pick up if it's a number I don't recognise, says Joyce. I saw that on Rogue Traders. Very wise, Joyce, continues Jason. Then I came here for a quick drink with Pops and I saw the man himself, Curran, arguing with Ventham. Keeping all this quiet from me, says Ron, and Jason raises his hand to acknowledge it. So after me and Dad had a couple of beers, and me, says Joyce, and Joyce, agrees Jason. After that, I went for a little drive just to do a bit of thinking. Then I headed down there, Tony's house, lovely place. Now, we're always cautious around each other, me and Tony, too many secrets, but I wouldn't be on his front door without a reason. His car's on the drive, so when there's no answer, I think he's seen me on his security and doesn't fancy a chat. And I didn't blame him, so I rang the bell a few more times and then I left. And this is the day he died? Asks Joyce. The day he died. I couldn't hear anything from inside, so I don't know if that was before or after or whatever. Anyway, home I go, and a couple of hours later, I'm on this WhatsApp group. WhatsApp group? Asks Elizabeth. But Joyce waves her away, and Jason continues. A few of the old faces, and someone says Tony's been found dead at home. I go cold, you know. I get sent a photo that morning and Tony dies that afternoon, which leaves me worried. I mean, I could look after myself, but Tony could look after himself too. See where that going. So I'm nervous, that's natural. And then the police get wind that I've been to Tony's and they get records saying I'd run Tony's phone that day too. And they've got a photo of me that was left by the body. You can't blame them, they think that stinks, and so would I. But you didn't kill Tony Curran, asks Elizabeth. No, not me, says Jason. Well, you can see why the police think I did. Their case is compelling, agrees Ibrahim. And you're here to see if we can find your old friend for you, asks Elizabeth. Well, says Jason, the way my dad tells it, however good the police are, you lot are better. There are quiet nods all round. And it's old friends, says Jason. There's the lad who took the photo too. And who was that? Asks Elizabeth. Turkish Gianni, the fourth member of our little gang. And he's Turkish? Asks Joyce. No, says Jason. Ibrahim notes this down. He's Turkish Cypriot and scarpered back there years ago. I know some good operatives in Cyprus, says Elizabeth. Look, says Jason, you owe me nothing. Less than that. I've done nothing good here and Tony never did. But if Bobby or Gianni killed Tony, then they're still out there. And if they're still out there, then why not me next? Again, not your business, I know. But Dad thought it might be up your street and I'm not going to turn down the help. So, what do you reckon? Ron asks. Well, says Elizabeth, here's my take. The others might disagree, though I suspect they won't. This is a mess of your own making, and a mess that came from greed and from drugs. And those are downsides for me. But there is an upside too, and that is that you are Ron's son. And I believe you are probably right. I believe we can find Bobby Tanner and Turkish Gianni for you, probably quickly. And whatever you've done, and whatever we might think of that, I would like to catch a murderer before that murderer catches you. Agreed, says Joyce. Agreed, says Ibrahim. Thank you, says Jason. Thank you, adds Ron. Not at all, says Elizabeth, standing. Now, I will leave you to your sauna. I have to make a few calls. Ron, I need to see you at the graveyard at 10 this evening, if you're free. Joyce and Ibrahim, I'll need you there too. Sounds lovely. Wouldn't miss it, says Ron. His son gives him a questioning look. And Jason, says Elizabeth. Yes, says Jason. If this is a bluff, it's a high-risk one, because we will catch this murderer, even if it's you. "71. Do you need a hand to get down into the grave? Asks Ibrahim. Yes, please, says Austin. That would be terribly kind of you. Bogdan has borrowed an arc light, and it is trained on the grave he had opened on the morning that Ian Ventham was murdered. The grave that had revealed an extra occupant on top of the coffin. A skeleton, buried where it had no right to be buried. Austin holds on to Ibrahim's arm and takes a step down into the grave. He is careful not to step on the bones scattered on the lip of the coffin. He looks up at Elizabeth and chuckles. This takes me back, Lizzie. Remember Leipzig? Elizabeth smiles. She certainly does remember. Joyce also smiles, because she has never heard Elizabeth called Lizzie before. She wonders if the others caught it. What do you think, Prof? Says Ron, sitting happily at the feet of our Lord Jesus Christ and drinking from a can of Stella. Well, I wouldn't ordinarily like to say, replies Austin, raising his glasses to get a closer look at the femur he is now holding. But if I were a gossip among friends, of course, I would say that they have been down here some while. Some while, Austin? Asks Elizabeth. I would say so, considers Austin, just by the coloration. And if you were being more specific, asks Elizabeth. Well, goodness, says Austin. If you want me to be specific, I would say... He takes a moment to calibrate his thoughts. I would say really quite some while indeed. So they could have been buried at the same time as Sister Margaret, asks Joyce. What's the date on the headstone? Asks Austin. 1874, reads Joyce. Not a chance. 30, 40, 50 years, perhaps, depending on the soil, but not 150. So at some point, says Ibrahim, somebody has dug up this grave, buried another body in it, and then filled it in again. Certainly, agrees Austin. You have yourselves a mystery. Another nun, perhaps, Austin, asks Elizabeth. Any jewellery down there? Any fragments of clothing? Not a thing on this one, says Austin. Stripped bare. If it was murder, then someone knew what they were doing. I'm going to take a few bones with me, if you don't mind. I'll have a little look at them in the morning, just to give you a clearer picture. Absolutely, Austin. Take your pick, says Elizabeth. Bogdan blows out his cheeks. So, we got to tell police now? Oh, I think we can probably keep this to ourselves until Austin gets back to us, replies Elizabeth. If everyone agrees. Everyone agrees. Someone give me a hand out of the grave, says Austin. Bogdan, old chap? Bogdan nods, but seems to want to get something clear first. Listen, I just need to say one thing. Is okay? In case maybe I go mad. This is not normal, right? An old man in a grave looking at bones. Someone is murdered maybe, but no one tells the police. Bogdan, you didn't tell the police when you first dug up the bones, said Joyce. Yes, but I am me, says Bogdan. I'm not normal. Well, we're us, says Joyce. We're not normal either, although I did used to be. Normal is an illusory concept, Bogdan, adds Ibrahim. Bogdan, trust us, says Elizabeth. We just want to find out whose these remains might be and who buried them, and that will be a lot easier without the police poking their noses in until absolutely necessary. If the police have the bones first, you can bet that will be the last we hear about them. And that seems unfair after all our hard work. I trust you, says Bogdan, then screws up his face as a thought occurs. Though, if it goes wrong, I bet it's me sent to prison. I won't let that happen. You're too useful, says Elizabeth. Now, please help Austin out of the grave and grab those bones for me. I suggest we all go back to Joyce's for a nice cup of tea. Splendid, says Austin, placing his selection of bones on the lip of the grave before reaching out for Bogdan's arm. You lead the way, Lizzie, says Ron, and finishes off his can of Stella. '72. Joyce. There was a jolly atmosphere, and I can understand the reasons why. We each of us understand we're in a gang, and we understand we are in the middle of something unusual. We understand also, I think, that we are doing something illegal, but we are past the age of caring. Perhaps we are raging against the dying of the light, but that is poetry, not life. There will be other reasons I have missed out, but I know on the walk back down the hill we felt giddy, like teenagers out too late. But when Austin laid the pile of bones on my dining table, while we still knew it was an adventure, I think they began to have a sobering effect on all of us, even Ron. It is all very well, the Thursday Murder Club and all our daring do, and the freedom of age and whatever we like to tell ourselves. But someone had died, however long ago it might have happened, so it was right to pause for reflection. There was no way around it. We couldn't conjure a single good reason why the extra body was there. On closer inspection, fueled by orange drizzle cake, Nigella, Austin was fairly sure that the body was a man, so it wasn't a nun. But who was he? And who had killed him? The first step in finding out the answers would be to discover when he had been killed. 30 years ago? 50 years ago? There was a big difference. Austin explained he would take the bones away and do further tests. After everybody had left, I Googled him, and it turns out he is a Sir. I can't say I was surprised. He did really know a great deal about bones. Quite what he made of standing in a grave at 10 at night in his 80s is his business, but I suppose any friend of Elizabeth's is probably used to these things. 3 sugars in his tea too, though you wouldn't know to look by him. And then the biggest question of all, of course. You'll be ahead of me here. Had the motive been found for one much more recent murder? Did someone else know the bones were hidden there? Was Ian Ventham killed to protect the Garden of Eternal Rest and the secret of those bones? We talked for around an hour, I suppose. Were we right not to involve the police? We will have to tell them eventually, but the feeling was that this is our story, our graveyard, our home, and just for the time being, we wanted to keep it for ourselves. As soon as we get the results from Austin, we will have to tell all, of course. So, we are trying to solve 2 murders, and possibly 3 if the skeleton was murdered. Or should I say, if the skeleton is of someone who was murdered. Is a skeleton a person? That's a question for greater minds than mine. I know Elizabeth is keen to track down Bobby and Gianni, but we all agreed the bones have to take precedence for now. I wonder if Chris and Donna are making any progress. We certainly haven't heard if they are. I do hope they're not keeping anything from us. '73. Chris and Donna are walking the 3 flights of stairs up to Chris's office. Donna has pretended to be frightened of lifts to force Chris to walk. So, Jason Ritchie for the Tony Curran murder, says Chris, and Matthew Mackey for Ian Ventham. Unless we're missing something, says Donna. I won't put that past us, says Chris. So let's work it through. We know Matthew Mackey was there, and we know he's a liar. He's a doctor, not a priest. So we know he could get hold of fentanyl and he'd know how to use it, says Donna. Agreed, says Chris. I think we've got everything except a motive. Well, he doesn't want the graveyard moved, says Donna. Is that enough? Not enough to arrest him, unless we find out why he doesn't want it moved. Is impersonating a priest a crime? Asks Donna. Someone I met on Tinder once pretended he was a pilot and tried to grope me outside an all bar one. I bet he regretted that. I punched him in the balls, then called in his reg number and got him breathalyzed on the way home. They both smile. But the smiles are fleeting. Both know they are in danger of letting Matthew Mackey slip between their fingers. No evidence whatsoever. Have you heard anything from your pals in the Thursday Murder Club? Asks Chris. Not a peep, says Donna, which makes me nervous. Me too, says Chris. And I really don't want to be the one to tell them about Jason Ritchie. Chris pauses for a moment on the landing, pretending to think, but really just to catch his breath. Perhaps Mackey's got something buried in the graveyard, says Chris. Doesn't want it dug up. Good place to bury something, agrees Donna. 74. Joyce. Have you ever used Skype? I hadn't until this morning, and now I have. Ibrahim set it up, and so we had gone round to his. He keeps his flat so clean, and I don't think he has anyone in to do it. There are files everywhere, but all locked away, so you can see them, but not read them. Imagine the stories you must hear if you're a therapist. Who did what to who? Or is it whom did what to who? Either way, I bet he's heard all sorts. Austin rang at 10 on the dot, as you would expect from a sir, and told us what he knew. We could see him on screen, and we took it in turns to go in the little box in the corner. It was hard because the box is very small, but I expect you get used to it if you do it a few times. The body was a man, which he'd already told us. He had a gunshot wound to the femur. Austin held it up to show us. We all tried to get in the box for that bit. Had that been the wound that killed him, Austin wouldn't like to say for certain, but probably not. A pre-existing injury. At one point, his wife walked past in the background. What must she think? Her husband holding up bones to a computer screen. Perhaps she's used to it. Now, how much do you know about how to tell how old bones are? I knew nothing, and Austin went through the whole thing in detail. It was fascinating. There was a machine, and there was a special dye, and something to do with carbon. I tried to remember this all the way home so I could write it down, but I'm afraid it's gone. But it was very interesting. It would be very good on the One Show if they ever needed it. He'd taken some soil with him too and done tests on that, but the soil stuff was less interesting. Back to the bones, please, I'd been thinking. The long and short of it, though, is that Austin had done some maths, and you can't be certain, and there were variables, and no one has all the answers, and all he could really do was make his best guess. At this point, Elizabeth told him to stop prattling and get on with it. Elizabeth can get away with that sort of thing, even to a sir. So he came out with it. The body was buried sometime in the 1970s, probably earlier rather than later. So 50-odd years ago, give or take. We thanked Austin. But then no one knew how to hang up. Ibrahim tried for a while and you could see he was losing face. In the end, Austin's wife came to the rescue his end. She seems lovely. So there we had it. 2 potential murders 50 years apart. Plenty to chew on for everyone there. And probably time to tell Chris and Donna what we have done. I hope they don't take it too personally. Elizabeth then asked if I would like to go to a crematorium in Brighton with her today, on a hunch, but I had already said that I would cook lunch for Bernard, so nothing doing. I know you can't smell it, but I'm making him steak and kidney. He is getting thin, so I'm just seeing what I can do. $75. Donna and Chris are waiting for their free coffee at the Wild Bean Cafe inside the BP garage on the A21. Anything to get out of the station for half an hour, to stop looking at the endless files from the Irish passport office. Chris picks up a chocolate bar. Chris, you don't need that, says Donna. Chris gives her a look. Please, says Donna. Let me help. I know it's hard. Chris nods and puts the chocolate bar back. So, what's in it for Mackie? Asks Donna. What's the connection with the graveyard? Why protect it if he's not a priest? Chris shrugs. Perhaps it's just a way of getting to Ventham. Perhaps there's another connection between them. Have we looked at Dr. Mackey's patient lists? You never know. Chris then picks up a cereal bar. That's even worse than a chocolate bar, says Donna. Even more sugar. Chris puts it back down again. He's going to be forced to eat a piece of fruit at this rate. He's dodgy as hell, says Chris. All we're missing is his motive. Donna's phone buzzes and she reads a message. She purses her lips and looks up at Chris. It's Elizabeth. She wonders if we might like to pop over this evening. I think that might have to wait, says Chris. Tell her we're busy solving 2 murders. Donna continues to scroll through the message. She says she has something for us. I quote, please do not read another file until you have seen what we have found. Also, there will be sherry. See you at 8. Donna puts her phone in her pocket and looks at her boss. Well, she asks. Well? Chris slowly strokes his stubble and considers the Thursday Murder Club. He has to face it. He likes them. He's happy drinking their tea, eating their cake and chatting off the record. He likes their rolling hills and their big sky. Was he being taken advantage of? Well, almost certainly, but for now he was getting plenty in return. Would this all look very bad if it came out? Yes, but it won't. And if it did, why not just take Elizabeth into his disciplinary hearing and let her work her magic? Eventually he looks up at Donna, who has her eyebrows raised, waiting for an answer. I'm a reluctant yes. $76. Now, we can do this one of 2 ways, says Elizabeth. You can kick up a fuss and curse us to the heavens and we can all waste a lot of time. Or you can just accept what has happened and we can enjoy our sherry and get on with this. Your choice. Chris cannot speak for a moment. He looks at the 4 of them, then to the air, then to the floor, looking for words that don't want to come. He holds the flat of a palm in the air in front of him in an effort to pause reality for the briefest of moments. But no luck. You, he begins slowly, you dug up a body. Well, technically we didn't dig it up, says Ibrahim, but a body was dug up. Yes, says Chris. Elizabeth and Joyce nod. Elizabeth takes a sip of her sherry. That's the long and short of it, confirms Joyce. And you then performed a forensic analysis on the bones. Well, again, not us personally, and only on some of them, says Ibrahim. Oh, that's fine then. Just a few. Chris's voice is raised, and Donna realises it's the first time she's experienced this. Then I wish you all a good evening. Nothing to see here. I knew you'd get melodramatic, says Elizabeth. Can we just get this over with and move on to business? Donna steps in. Melodramatic, she addresses Elizabeth directly. Elizabeth, you just dug up a human body and failed to report it to the police. This isn't pretending to be a nun who's had her bag stolen. What nun? Asks Chris. Nothing, says Donna quickly. This is a serious crime. Elizabeth, you could all go to jail for this. Nonsense, says Elizabeth. Far from nonsense, says Chris. What on earth are you doing? I need you to think very carefully about what you say next. Why did you dig up a body? Let's take this step by step. Well, as I stated previously, we didn't dig up the body, but our attention was drawn to the fact that a body had been dug up, says Ibrahim. And we were curious, naturally, says Ron. Our attention was grabbed, agrees Ibrahim. What with the murder of Ian Ventham, adds Joyce, it seemed it might be important. You didn't think Donna and me might have been interested at this point, says Chris. Firstly, Chris, it's Donna and I, says Elizabeth. And secondly, who knew what the bones were? We didn't want to waste your time until we knew for sure what we were dealing with. What if we'd called you out and they were nothing but cow bones? Wouldn't we have looked silly old fools then? We wouldn't have wanted to waste your time, agrees Ibrahim. We know you are busy with 2 murders already. But off they went for analysis, continues Elizabeth. And back it comes, human bones, good to have it confirmed, no cost to the taxpayer. Male, died sometime in the 1970s. A gunshot wound to the leg, but no way of telling if that's what killed him. Now to invite Chris and Donna to take a look and to lead things from here. Get the professionals in. Really feels like you might be thanking us. Chris is trying to compose a response. Donna decides that this one might be her responsibility. Christ, Elizabeth, just give it a rest for 1 second. You can drop the act with us. The second you dug up that body, you knew they were human bones because I think you can tell the difference. Joyce, you were a nurse for 40 years. Do you know the difference between human bones and cow bones? Well, yes, admits Joyce. The second you did that, Elizabeth, you and your whole gang, we are not Elizabeth's gang, interrupts Ibrahim. Donna raises her eyebrows at Ibrahim, who holds up a hand in concession. She continues, the lot of you, from that moment, were in deep, deep trouble. This is not a neat little trick. You might fool the rest of the world, but you don't fool me. You're not plucky underdogs or helpful amateurs. This is a serious crime. This is bigger than a serious crime. And this doesn't end with us all giggling over a glass of sherry. It ends in a courtroom. How could you be so stupid? The 4 of you. We're friends and you treat me like this. Elizabeth sighs. Well, this is exactly what I meant, Donna. I knew you both make a fuss. A fuss, says Donna incredulously. Yes, a fuss, says Elizabeth. And I do understand in the circumstances. Just doing your job, agrees Ron. Admirable, if you want my opinion, adds Ibrahim. But the fuss ends here, says Elizabeth. If you're going to arrest us, arrest us. Take the four of us to the station, question us all night. Get the same answer all night. No comment, says Ron. No comment, says Ibrahim. Like on 24 hours in police custody, says Joyce. You don't know who dug the body up, and you won't hear the answer from any of us, continues Elizabeth. You don't know who took the bones away for analysis, and you won't hear that from us either. At the end of the evening, you might try and explain to the CPS that 4 people in their 70s and 80s have failed to report digging up a body. For what reason? With what evidence other than the inadmissible confession you've taken from us this evening? And with 4 suspects, all of whom are quite happy to go to court, smile happily and pretend to mistake the judge for their granddaughter and ask why she doesn't visit often enough. The whole process is difficult, costly, and time-consuming and achieves nothing. No one is going to prison, no one is getting a fine, no one's even going to be picking litter by the roadside. Not with my back, says Ron. Or, continues Elizabeth, you can forgive us and believe us when we say we were trying to help. You can let us apologize for our over-enthusiasm because we did know what we were doing was wrong, but we did it anyway. We know you've spent the last 24 hours in the dark, and we know we are in your debt. And if you forgive us, then tomorrow morning, on a wild hunch, you can order a search of the Garden of Eternal Rest. You can dig up the body, you can send it to your own forensics team, who will tell you it's a male who was almost certainly buried in the early 1970s, and then we'll all happily be on the same page. There is a moment's silence. So, asks Chris very slowly, you've reburied the bones. We thought it was best, says Joyce, to give you the glory. I'd leave the grave in the top right-hand corner till about 4th or 5th if I were you, says Ron. Don't want to make it too obvious. And in the meantime, continues Elizabeth, we can all have a nice evening and no more shouting. We can tell you everything we know, so you can really hit the ground running in the morning. You could even share a bit of information with us if you thought that was appropriate, adds Ibrahim. How about some information about the custodial sentences you can get for perverting the course of justice? Or disturbing a grave, says Chris. Up to 10 years, if you're interested. We just went through all this, Chris, sighs Elizabeth. Stop grandstanding and swallow your pride. And besides, we're not hampering, we're helping. I didn't notice either of you digging up a body, adds Ron to Chris and Donna. We have certainly done an awful lot of the work so far, says Ibrahim. So this is how I see it, confirms Elizabeth. Either you arrest us, which we would all understand, and Joyce, in fact, I think would actually enjoy. No comment, says Joyce, nodding happily. Or you don't arrest us, and we can spend the rest of the evening talking about exactly why someone buried a body on this hillside sometime in the 1970s. Chris looks at Donna. And we can also discuss whether that same person has just murdered Ian Bentham to keep it secret, says Elizabeth. Donna looks at Chris. Chris has a question. So, you think the same person might have committed 2 murders, but nearly 50 years apart? It's an interesting question, isn't it? Asks Elizabeth. It's an interesting question we could have been asking last night, says Chris. It might have been useful to know we could be looking out for someone who was right here in the 1970s and is still right here now, adds Donna. We really are sorry, says Joyce. But Elizabeth was adamant, and you know Elizabeth. Let's move on, says Elizabeth. Put this behind us. Do we have a choice, Elizabeth? Asks Chris. Choice is overrated. You'll learn that as years fly by, says Elizabeth. Now, to business. What do you make of the priest, I wonder? Father Mackey. Might he have been around when this place was a convent? I take it from that question that you haven't been able to find out anything about Father Mackey, says Chris. Don't tell me I found a chink in your armour. My inquiries are ongoing, says Elizabeth. No need, Elizabeth, we've cracked that one for you, says Donna. It's Dr. Mackey. Not a priest, never has been, never will be. A doctor in Ireland, moved over here in the 90s. That's very curious, says Elizabeth. Why pretend to be a priest? Told you he was a wrong'un, says Ron to Ibrahim. So he might have killed Ian Bentham, says Donna. And he's certainly up to something. But I doubt it's because of your bones. Is it worth my pointing out any more that this is all confidential, says Chris. You are quite safe with us. You know that, don't you? Nothing ever leaves this room, says Elizabeth. Shall we just forget this ever happened, the business with the bones and what have you, and pool our knowledge? I think we've pooled quite enough for one day, Elizabeth, says Donna. Oh, really? Says Elizabeth. And yet you haven't even told us about the Tony Curran photograph yet. We had to find out for ourselves. Donna and Chris both look at Elizabeth. Chris lets out a theatrical sigh. By way of a peace offering, says Ibrahim, perhaps you would like to know who took the photograph? Chris looks up to the heavens, or Joyce's Artex ceiling. I would actually like to know that, yes. Lad named Turkish Gianni, says Ron. Although he's not Turkish, adds Joyce. You've seen the photo, Ron, asks Donna. Ron nods. Nice one of Jason, eh? You want my view for what it's worth? Says Ron. You find Turkish Gianni or Bobby Tanner. You find Tony Curran's killer. Well, then, if we're laying all our cards on the table, says Chris, has Jason explained away his phone calls to Tony Curran on the morning of the murder? And has he explained away the presence of his car in the area at the exact moment that Tony Curran was murdered? Yes, says Elizabeth. To our satisfaction. Anything you'd like to share? Says Donna. Listen, I'll get him to give you a bell and explain. Don't worry, says Ron. But shall we get on and find this Gianni fella and Bobby Tanner? Just leave that with us, please, says Chris. I think we're unlikely to just leave that with you, Chris, says Elizabeth. I'm ever so sorry. Would you like some sherry? Says Joyce. It's only Sainsbury's, but it's taste the difference. Chris sinks back into his chair and submits. If any of this ever gets back to my superintendent, I will personally arrest you and march you into court myself. I swear on my life. Chris, no one will ever find out, says Elizabeth. You know how I used to make my living? Well, not really, if I'm honest. Exactly. As a complicit silence falls over the room, it seems the evening's drinking can now begin in earnest. I am very proud of how we all work together as a team, says Ibrahim. Cheers. '77. Joyce. I'm glad we told Chris and Donna about the bones. It seems right. Now everyone can keep an eye out. Who was here in the 1970s and is still here today? That should keep them all occupied for a bit. Everyone knows everything now, and that seems fair. So, where are Gianni and Bobby? Now we've dealt with the bones, I know Elizabeth will be thinking about how we track them down. That's right up her street, isn't it? I will get a call in the morning and it will be, Joyce, we're going to Reading, or Joyce, we're going to Inverness, or Timbuktu. And bit by bit, she'll tell me why, and before you know it, we'll be having a cup of tea with Bobby Tanner or a cafe au lait with Turkish Gianni. You wait and see. Tomorrow morning before 10 a.m. Guaranteed. The only time I ever use my passport is when I need to pick up a parcel, but I've just checked and it has 3 years left. I remember when I first got it, wondering if it would be my last ever. The odds on it being renewed are with me now, I think. Anyway, that's just to say that if Gianni or Bobby Tanner are abroad somewhere, then I wouldn't put it past Elizabeth to hop on a plane. We're only a drive from Gatwick here. I could send Joanna a postcard. Who, me? Oh, I'm in Cyprus for a couple of days, tracking down a fugitive. Possibly armed, but you mustn't worry. Though no one sends postcards anymore, do they? Joanna has shown me how to send photos on my phone, but I'm begged if it's ever worked when I tried. I just get that spinning circle. Perhaps I could ask Bernard to come along with me. A couple of days in the sun, last minute thing, we just fancied it. Think it might frighten the poor man to death. I don't like to give up on a chase, but Bernard seems to be drifting further and further away from me. He was not a bundle of fun at lunch, and there was plenty of steak and kidney left over. And don't think I don't know what the others think, what they suspect. They'll be checking whether Bernard was here 50 years ago. They haven't spoken to me about it, but you mark my words. Check away, don't mind me. Timbuktu is a real place, by the way. Did you know that? It came up in a quiz once. Ibrahim will remember where it is, but I did think that was interesting.
Yeah, oh, Joyce.
Yay!
Oh,
Yay! Hooray!
oh.
How exciting.
What an incredibly good episode. Elizabeth is quite the handful. She's just
She owned that police station now.
Life goals.
I love her so much. I love her so much.
And Mr. Collins made an appearance as well in Austin earlier.
Katie said the same thing.
Yeah, I realised I hadn't properly prepped the voice for him, so I was just pulled one off the top of the dome. It's like, what's one that is sufficiently different to everyone else who was talking in the scene? I had clocked that it was Mr. Collins until now.
You know, he turned out to be a sir, so that's quite fitting, I'd say.
Exactly, sir. Oh, Joyce.
Oh.
What
I loved the thing about Skype and no one knowing how to hang up. I was just like, this is perfect.
Just going in the little box.
It's so cute.
There's something about Joyce. She's so unbelievably sweet, and particularly at the end was being so unbelievably sweet that there's almost something sinister about it.
Oh.
Like
Oh.
the way that she was like, oh, now they're trying to figure out who was here 50 years ago. Like, it just had a bit of a vibe of they're never going to catch me.
Yeah.
like she's sweet, but she's also got this edge to her that's very like she can say something and you'll expect it to be sweet because everything else she says is sweet, but then she can say something really dark, like, you know, about like just in the previous chapter that she wasn't sad about people dying. And you're like, that's actually kind of dark, but okay. So she can kind of get away with it even when you're not expecting it.
Yeah.
She's also a nurse. She would know how to do it. She would know how to inject someone.
I think
saying.
there's so many bluffs in this book, as in I feel like Joyce is the 4th level of bluff. Because everyone's like, oh, well, clearly it was Ian Bentham. Oh, he's fucking dead. Oh, he's probably, wait, Tony wouldn't kill himself. It's probably Jason. Oh, shit, no, it's probably not him now, crap. Elizabeth, no, but actually, why would she be doing that? It's like, Joyce is
Priest. Nah, probably not.
she's in there somewhere.
I think it's Joyce, and the priest is the red herring, and then Jason is the like one who the police are feeling like it's him, but it's not. I'm placing my chips on Joyce.
So that's the blue herring, is the police related.
Yes.
I think it's one of the llamas.
That would make the most sense.
Joyce.
I might on Monday. I might place a poll. I'll put a poll up and say, right, okay, heading into the.
No, I'm not going to read them. I was just having a look at how many days there were left.
Nearly took Martin's hand off at the wrist. Yep.
Wait, but there are 5 markers. Does that mean that there's 6
Monday,
days?
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Oh, is that where we just finished
Friday.
today?
Yes.
Do you not take out the marker?
No.
Okay.
Martin, do you have a bow in your hair?
I do.
Very pretty.
It's this incredible innovation which Frankie has introduced me to, known as hair clips. My hair's grown too long that without this clip, it flops down and pokes me in the eye.
Good emo look, though.
This clips it back nicely, and it's kind of adorable.
It's very adorable.
I feel inspired. My hair is getting a bit, I feel inspired.
Oh, you got a good emo quick.
Look at this.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Get yourself a haircut now. They're great.
Get some hair clips, Jonathan.
Yeah, my hair's getting ridiculous.
Look how good it looks, though. Look how thick it is.
Epic hair, that.
God damn, your hair is nice.
That hair looks fantastic, and you can definitely fun things with clips.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, just give it a few weeks. You can have a whole like Zoom room of people with the same hairstyle and clips. It'd be great.
If you see me first thing in the morning, it's an absolute mess. You probably don't want to see me first thing in the morning.
Gel it straight up like that.
Then you won't need kitchen knives. You can just chop your veg by like.
Delicious. So hygienic.
Mm.
Should we say goodbye to the catch-up crew? Shall we do it?
Yes.
Shall we?
All many of them who are going to be joining us.
All many of them. Catch-up crew. All many of you. I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. And get ready to vote on Monday. Place your bets. Who done it?
Was it Frankie?
I will tell you, it's somebody that we've met.
Oh.
It's not like a new unintroduced character. Or is it?
That's quite a big giveaway, actually.
What a big spoiler you've given.
But even if, like, you know, Turkish chap or other chap, Bobby, killed Tony, then it's 2 very coincidental murders. So obviously they didn't kill Ian because, you know.
But I did say it's someone that you have met already.
No, but so I was initially disagreeing or just stating that was quite a big giveaway of you.
But what makes you think you haven't met either of them yet?
Oh.
Because they
Llamas.
haven't mentioned or described.
They're disguised as
You're making
llamas.
this bigger and bigger giveaway.
I don't think we better pull on this thread. I think we best leave.
Yeah. This jumper is going to come right off if you pull any harder.
Okay.
Well.
I'm saying nothing. I'm saying nothing.
You did.
I'm literally just fucking with you all. I'm completely just fucking with you. Why? When will you learn? When will you learn
To never trust you.
to never trust me?
You are the worst.
No.
Okay,
German
okay.
sausages.
Hold on. We're still flipping coding. Man alive. Okay.
Ketchup crew, flee for your lives.
Jeffrey.
Run for the hills.
Don't listen to these bastards, Ketchup Crew. I love you. Good night. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.